I don't think anyone at that boardroom dinner noticed my hands trembling under the tablecloth, except maybe Grandma Helen. She always noticed things no one else bothered to see. The room was all polished steel and glass, designed to intimidate. Corporate elites mingled with extended family members in $1,000 suits, sipping wine aged longer than my career. I didn't belong, not in their eyes, not in hers. Victoria Carter, my mother, corporate empress and queen of emotional frostbite, sat at the head of the table like she ruled the universe. Samantha, my older sister, flanked her right side, her golden girl, the pride of her legacy. You could practically smell the ambition radiating off them both. And then there was me, Ethan Carter, the afterthought. You know, Ethan, my mother said, with that silk-wrapped venom she was so good at. You really should have taken that job Samantha lined up for you. Instead, you're, what? Playing entrepreneur? It's cute. Samantha let out a laugh, sharp, rehearsed, camera ready. He's always had dreams bigger than his bank account, she said, eyes dancing with mockery. Laughter trickled around the table. I clenched my jaw, staring at my half-empty wine glass. The clink of silverware, the clatter of insincere conversation, the judgment bleeding from every polite smile. It was suffocating. I didn't flinch. I wouldn't. Not tonight. My eyes found Grandma Helen's across the table. Her expression didn't match the rest. She wasn't smirking. She was waiting. I think she knew it was time. Just as my mother raised her glass, poised to deliver some half-hearted toast in Samantha's honor, Grandma Helen stood. It wasn't dramatic. No clattering of chairs, no sudden shout, just quiet authority, the kind that made people notice without knowing why. Before you say anything, Victoria, Grandma said, her voice calm but ironclad, I believe it's time this family heard the truth. The clinking stopped. Someone let out a breath too loud. Samantha blinked, thrown off her script. Mother arched an eyebrow, the way she always did when she felt control slipping. Mother, really? This isn't necessary. No, Grandma replied, eyes still locked on her. It's long overdue. She turned to me. Ethan, you've kept your head down for years, and I understand why, but I think it's time they saw what I've seen. My heart started racing. I had never imagined this moment not like this. My mother leaned forward slightly, voice cool but tense. Saw what? That he's been wasting his potential on some vanity project? Samantha chuckled, but it was thinner now, strained. Grandma didn't even glance at them. Her voice dropped a note deeper, cutting clean through the air. You never asked what he was building, Victoria. But I did, and I believed in it enough to invest. The silence that followed was the kind that makes you aware of your own breathing. My mother blinked. You? What? I invested in Ethan's company 3 years ago, Grandma said, unfazed. And as of last quarter, it officially surpassed Carter and Company in profit and reach. I heard forks hit plates. Samantha's smile cracked like old porcelain. My mother's lips parted, but no sound came out. Your empire, Grandma continued, now turning to them both, is already his. You don't plan for a moment like that. You might fantasize, maybe even rehearse what you'd say. But when it happens for real, when everything you've been quietly building becomes undeniable, it doesn't feel like triumph. It feels like exposure. My hands were steady on the table, but inside, everything trembled. Everyone stared at me now, the way they never had before. It wasn't admiration. It was confusion, disbelief, fear, maybe. Samantha's eyes narrowed. You're bluffing, she snapped. There's no way you pulled that off without anyone noticing. I'm not bluffing, I said, my voice flat. I'm just not loud about things that matter. My mother finally found her voice. It sounded thinner than I remembered. But you don't have the resources. You don't have the connections. That was always the assumption, wasn't it? That without their approval, their network, their money, I was nothing. I met her gaze, calm and unwavering. I didn't need yours. I could almost hear Grandma Helen smiling across the table. You think we're just going to believe this? Samantha scoffed. You expect us to accept that you suddenly… What? built a corporation in secret? I didn't answer her directly. Instead, I reached into my blazer pocket and placed a slim folder onto the table, letting it land with a quiet thud. Inside, partnership contracts, board acquisitions, and final transfer documents, evidence of a buyout that had been years in the making. Years of late nights, ramen dinners, and 30 rejected pitch decks. Years of being told to get serious and just join the family business already. Years of listening to Samantha get applause for doing the bare minimum while I drowned in silence. I looked around the table. These weren't just relatives and family friends. They were investors, advisors, partners, people who had shaken my mother's hand 1,000 times and looked through me like I was wallpaper. And now? Now they were staring like they didn't know me at all. I've spent the last 3 years studying Carter and Company, I said slowly. Its structure, its weaknesses, its dependency on old money and older ideas. I waited, I built, and when the opportunity opened, when your reckless overexpansion nearly tanked the company, I took it. My voice didn't rise. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. Samantha's mouth was twitching. She reached for the folder like it might catch fire in her hands. "This isn't possible," she whispered, flipping through it. "This can't be legal." "Oh, it's legal," Grandma Helen interjected smoothly, her tone still polite. "I had my legal team oversee the entire thing. Every signature is real. Every clause ironclad." My mother looked shell-shocked. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "This company, this family was supposed to be your legacy," I said, quieter now. "But you were so focused on curating an image of success, you never noticed the cracks forming underneath." My words hung heavy in the room. "You gave Samantha everything," I continued. "Every promotion, every endorsement, every ounce of praise. And me? You offered pity when you thought I was struggling, but you never asked what I was really doing." My voice thickened, but I pressed forward. "You dismissed me the moment I took a path you didn't choose for me. You walked away," my mother said suddenly, as if trying to reclaim some kind of narrative. "You left this family. You left your responsibilities. I left the version of myself you tried to force me into," I replied. Across the room, Samantha was still flipping through the documents, her eyes darting like they were searching for a loophole, a flaw, anything to cling to. "You really think you can run this place?" she asked bitterly. "You think the board will just fall in line? They already have," I said, pulling up an email thread on my phone and sliding it across the table. "I own the majority of the controlling shares. As of 8:00 a.m. tomorrow, Carter and Company becomes part of a new parent company, mine." She stared at the screen. The color drained from her face. I turned to the rest of the room. I didn't come here to humiliate anyone, but I also won't keep apologizing for succeeding without their permission. A few people looked away. A few nodded. Then I looked back at my mother. Her expression was unreadable, but there was something behind her eyes. Not anger, not pride, loss. Real, irreversible loss. Maybe for the first time, she saw me not as a disappointment, but as someone she no longer had power over. Grandma stood and placed a hand on my shoulder. "I invested in you because I saw something Victoria never did," she said softly. "You didn't inherit power. You earned it, and now it's time you used it." I nodded, unable to speak. There was too much in my throat. Years of silence and swallowed words. It was almost time to leave. But before I did, I turned to Samantha, who sat frozen beside our mother, and said the one thing I knew would cut through all the noise. "You didn't lose to me. You lost to yourself." And then I walked out slowly, deliberately, with the kind of calm only the truly free ever feel. The boardroom was silent long after I left, but silence doesn't last long in places built on ego. By the time I stepped into the cool night air, outside Carter and Company's glass tower, my phone buzzed. A message from Marcus, my operations chief, and the only person who believed in me before Grandma ever wrote a check. "Press release is live. Coverage hitting the major outlets in 10. Perfect. The city skyline blinked ahead like it knew something was about to shift, and it had just not for the ones who thought they were untouchable. I barely had time to breathe before I heard the heavy clack of heels behind me, fast and sharp. I turned. Samantha. She stormed out the building, her face twisted in something between disbelief and fury. Her coat slipped off one shoulder, her designer heels catching slightly on the steps. "You think this is over?" she spat, her voice just loud enough to draw the attention of the security guard near the door. "You think you're the hero in this story?" "No," I said coolly, "but I'm no longer the footnote. You humiliated us in front of investors, our partners, our entire world." I tilted my head. "No, I told the truth. You humiliated yourselves by pretending I didn't exist." Her hands clenched at her sides. "You set us up. I didn't move." "No, Sam. You set yourselves up. You played a rigged game so long. You forgot what fairness looks like." She looked like she might explode, but before she could say more, another pair of footsteps echoed across the pavement. My mother emerged from the building slowly. No heels, just flats and silence. For once, Victoria Carter didn't look like the queen of anything. Her posture, still elegant, was softer now. There was no camera-ready smile, no power move, just her, the real her. The one I hadn't seen since I was a kid, trying to get her attention with Lego inventions and grade school certificates. She didn't speak at first. She just studied me. Then, in a voice I hadn't heard in years, gentle, tired, human, she said, "You really did it." "I did. And everything. You planned it all?" "Yes," I answered. "And I had help. Marcus, Grandma. A few people who saw me when you didn't." Her eyes flickered at the word grandma, but she didn't argue. I think part of her already knew. Maybe she'd known for longer than she cared to admit. Beside her, Samantha let out a bitter laugh. "So that's it? We just lose?" "No one just loses," I said. "You lose when you stop evolving. You lose when you keep playing the same cards and expect new results. You think you're better than us now," Samantha hissed. I stepped forward. "No. I was better all along. You were just too busy applauding your own reflections to see it." My mother closed her eyes for a second, long enough that I wondered if they stung. "You were always quiet," she said. "Always. Separate. I thought it was a phase. It was survival." That shut her up. A long, bitter wind swept down the street. For a second, I thought they would walk away without another word. But then my mother surprised me. "I saw the reports," she said softly. "Your growth, your numbers, they're legitimate. More than I expected. You never asked before." She nodded. "You're right. It didn't feel like vindication. It felt like the ghost of an apology that would never fully form." "Your father would be ashamed of me," she murmured. I said nothing. I'd heard her use my father's name as a weapon all my life. I wasn't about to let her use him as a shield now. Samantha scoffed and turned to her. "You're not seriously defending him." "I'm not defending anyone," my mother replied, her voice brittle but real. "But I'm not blind anymore either." That silence came again, the same one from the boardroom. The kind that didn't feel like a pause, but a collapse. The final crumble of a house of cards. "I'm not trying to destroy you," I told her. "I just stopped letting you destroy me." There it was, the truth in its final form. And with that, I turned. I didn't storm off. I didn't slam a metaphorical door. I just walked, away from the past, into the future. As I crossed the plaza, I heard Samantha call out one last time, "You'll regret this, Ethan." I didn't turn around. Instead, I spoke just loud enough for her to hear. "No, but I think you might." The next morning, the city woke up to headlines they didn't see coming. Carter and Company acquired in silent power move. Underdog CEO Ethan Carter steps in. Golden Air ousted as shareholders shakeup sends shockwaves through industry. From shadow to spotlight, the quiet takeover that rewrote corporate legacy. And just like that, I wasn't the forgotten son anymore. I was the man holding the keys to an empire they thought I'd never touch. From my office, on the top floor of the building I used to walk past with headphones on, and a backpack full of failed business plans, I watched as security escorted my mother and Samantha off the premises. Official this time. No more family favors. No more hiding behind legacy. Just two women stripped of the thrones they'd carved out of marble and ego. Samantha didn't look back. My mother did. And for the first time, I didn't feel the weight of her gaze on my shoulders. I felt taller than it. Marcus walked in a few minutes later, holding 2 coffees. "They made a scene downstairs," he said with a smirk. Samantha tried to argue with the security guy about how she built this company. And what did he say? He shrugged and pointed to the memo. "I work for Ethan Carter now," Marcus grinned. I took the coffee. "I bet that stung." "Oh, it visibly stung," he said, collapsing into the seat across from me. "You know, I never doubted you, but damn, that was clean." 3 years of planning, I said. "I wasn't going to leave any blood on the floor." "Your grandmother just called," he added, sobering slightly. "She's proud of you." I nodded, feeling something tighten in my chest. She's the reason this happened. She was the only one who ever looked at me like I mattered, even when I had nothing. "She didn't just believe in you, man," Marcus said, voice soft. "She bet the farm on you, and she won." I turned to the glass wall behind me. The skyline stretched wide, endless, and for the first time in my life, it felt like it was mine to shape. The following weeks moved fast. Legal teams worked overtime. New leadership structures were installed. Departments were consolidated, performance audits conducted, and toxic managers replaced quietly, respectfully, but efficiently. My mother's empire had been running on autopilot for too long. Riding its own legacy like momentum was eternal. It wasn't. But I didn't just come to clean house. I came to rebuild it better. I launched a mentorship program for underserved entrepreneurs, brought in a rotating board seat for external voices, doubled down on R&D with real funding and fresh vision. We ditched vanity contracts and refocused the company on innovation over influence. And maybe the biggest change? I started showing up as myself, no more hiding behind politeness or self-doubt. A few weeks later, I got a message I didn't expect. It was from my mother. Lunch? Just the two of us. My first instinct was to ignore it, but I didn't. We met at a quiet bistro she used to take clients to when I was a kid. She was already seated when I arrived, dressed in something muted for once, not trying to make a statement. Her eyes scanned my face, like she was trying to find the boy she once dismissed. "You look different," she said. "I am different," she nodded, folding her hands on the table. "I've had a lot of time to think. Too much, probably." "About what?" "You," she said. "About what I missed. About who you became." I didn't rush to fill the silence. I let her sit with it. "I used to think legacy meant control," she continued. "Preserving it, protecting it. But maybe it means letting it grow without you." "That's not something you used to believe," I said. "It's something I had to believe now," she admitted. I searched her face for traces of manipulation, pride, anything that felt like the old Victoria Carter. But she just looked tired and honest. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she added quietly. "But I wanted you to know. I see it now. I see you." That hit harder than I expected. "Thank you," I said simply. She nodded. It wasn't a reconciliation. It wasn't closure. But it was something. Something real. Later that week, I sat alone in the executive conference room, no longer a stranger to it. A folder of proposals sat open in front of me, but I wasn't reading them. I was thinking about everything that led here. The shame, the exclusion, the silence I grew up in, the slow building storm that started not with rage, but with resolve. I thought about how revenge stories always end with some dramatic speech or public fall. Mine didn't. Mine ended with quiet recognition, a private win, and a decision to be better. I wasn't here to punish anyone. I was here to build something no one could take away. Not this time. Not ever again. Story 2. If someone had told me last year that I'd be receiving an invitation to my ex-fiance's wedding, his new fiancé, less than 2 months after we were supposed to get married, I'd have laughed or cried. Maybe both. But here we are. I'm Hannah, 31. Up until recently, I was engaged to a man named Daniel, 36, who I thought I knew better than anyone. We'd been together for 7 years. We met during our senior year in college group project, cliché and all. He was the magnetic, easygoing guy who could charm anyone in the room. I was the meticulous planner who made sure deadlines weren't just met, but color-coded and beautifully formatted. People used to say we balanced each other out. Honestly, I thought we did too. Through his law school grind and my climb in project management, we stuck it out. It wasn't always easy, but I believed in us. We had inside jokes, Sunday grocery routines, a joint Spotify playlist, even a shared Google Calendar titled Our Future. If that's not modern romance, I don't know what is. Last year, after endless subtle and not so subtle nudges from my family, Daniel finally proposed. It was picture perfect. He orchestrated the whole thing at a vineyard resort, rose petals, a sunset, a handwritten speech, even a drone for aerial photos. His family was thrilled. Mine was ecstatic. I was in that dazed, happy bubble where you believe your life is finally slotting into place. And like any type A bride-to-be, I dove headfirst into planning. Spreadsheets, budget tabs, venue tours, menu tastings, you name it. Daniel was supportive in that distracted, slightly distant way. He said he trusted my vision. I didn't question it much. He was swamped at work, dealing with a particularly brutal corporate merger, and I assumed his stress was just part of that grind. Looking back, the signs were there. He started taking more private calls, always stepping out of the room. His phone was on silent 24/7. One night, I saw a message pop up from someone named Marissa. When I asked, he said she was a paralegal helping him with a client case. I wanted to believe him. And after 7 years, you don't expect to be lied to. 2 months before the wedding, everything collapsed. Daniel missed our final venue walkthrough, claimed a client emergency. When he finally came home, he looked like someone had just handed him a death sentence. He paced the living room for 10 solid minutes before finally blurting out, "I can't do this. I'm calling off the wedding." I wish I could say I yelled, demanded answers, or cried. But in that moment, I just sat there, trying to compute what the hell was happening. Then came the twist. It wasn't cold feet. It was another woman. Marissa the paralegal wasn't just a fling. According to him, they had reconnected months earlier and realized they were meant to be. Oh, and they were already engaged. Apparently, Daniel had been planning their wedding while mine was still on track. Like it was some sort of swap meet. The cherry on top? He wanted me to come to their wedding, to keep things civil. I'm not sure what reaction he expected. Applause? A high five? What he got was silence, and then me methodically canceling our vendors, one by one, trying not to break down on the phone with the florist. The days after were a blur. I crashed at my sister's place for a week, while my mom toggled between rage and grief, and my best friend Emma offered to egg Daniel's car. She wasn't kidding. Emotionally, I was wrecked, but financially, I was bleeding. Daniel left me holding the bag on most of the deposits. The venue alone had a non-refundable clause we couldn't wriggle out of. When I asked him to split the cost, he said he couldn't afford it because his new wedding budget was tight. I could write an entire essay titled "The Audacity of Men." But here's the thing. I didn't ghost him. I didn't block him. And for some reason I still don't fully understand, I RSVP'd yes to the wedding invitation. I didn't tell many people, just Emma and my therapist. Emma called it a terrible idea. My therapist asked me why I needed to go. I said I didn't know, but deep down I did. I needed to see it, not to scream or throw a drink, just to see if he would actually go through with it. To see her, to look into the eyes of the woman who'd been playing house with my fiancé while I was picking out wedding favors. A week later, the official invitation arrived. Gold embossed, ridiculously formal. Inside was a handwritten note from Daniel, "I hope you'll come. I want you to see that this is what's right for me. Let's be respectful. Let's move on peacefully. Translation, please don't make a scene." My parents were horrified. My dad, who rarely raises his voice, muttered something about raising a lawsuit instead of a daughter. My mom begged me not to go, but I'd made up my mind. Then came the second punch to the gut. Marissa wasn't just some random office flirtation. Mutual friends told me they'd been a thing for months. One even said she'd seen them together at a work retreat back in January, 3 months before our save the dates went out. People knew. I didn't. The betrayal felt bigger somehow. It wasn't just about him lying. It was about being the last to know in a room full of people whispering behind your back. Social media made things worse. The engagement post popped up 2 days after our breakup. Same vineyard, same drone, different woman. Some mutuals unfriended him immediately. Others reached out to me quietly, expressing shock or offering support. A few tried to stay neutral, and I appreciated the ones who were honest about not knowing what to say. Meanwhile, I was spiraling between rage and numbness, so I did what any emotionally overwhelmed millennial would do. I started journaling, page after page of uncensored thoughts. Therapy helped too. My therapist didn't push me to explain why I was going to the wedding, but she did ask me to examine what I hoped to gain from it. At that point, I wasn't sure. Closure? Vindication? A reason to let go? Maybe all three? Emma dragged me to a boutique downtown to find a dress. "If you're going and looking like a goddess," she said. And I did. I found this stunning emerald gown with a plunging neckline and a slit that meant business. I looked in the mirror and didn't see the girl who got dumped. I saw a woman who was done being invisible. 1 week before the wedding, Daniel called. "Are you really coming?" he asked, like he didn't believe it. "I am," I said. Silence. Then, "I just hope it doesn't get weird. Too late for that, buddy." I hung up and blocked his number. I didn't need a guilt trip. What I needed was clarity, and I was going to get it, even if it meant walking straight into the most awkward social situation of my life. I wasn't looking for revenge. Not yet, but I was done being the quiet one. The morning of the wedding, I didn't cry. I didn't second-guess myself. I didn't text my friends asking if I should still go. I'd already decided. I woke up, took a long shower, put on the playlist Emma made for me, equal parts Beyoncé and revenge pop, and did my makeup slowly, intentionally, like armor, not to impress him, not to spite her, just for me. That emerald dress, it still looked as fierce as the day I bought it. I slipped it on, smoothed it down, and stared at myself in the mirror. I didn't look broken. I didn't look abandoned. I looked like someone who had been through fire and decided to rise anyway. The wedding was at this over-the-top estate outside the city. One of those venues that screams we want everyone to think we're rich. I pulled up, parked at the far edge of the lot, and walked in alone. People stared. Some did double takes. I knew I looked good. I wanted to. But more than that, I knew my presence was making people uncomfortable. Good. Let them feel a fraction of what I felt the night he told me he was marrying someone else. I kept my shoulders back and walked through the entrance like I belonged there. Daniel saw me before I saw him. He was standing near the courtyard with a glass of champagne in one hand, talking to someone from his firm. His eyes flicked up, caught mine, and his face froze for half a second. That was all I needed. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just gave him a small nod, barely a gesture, and walked right past. Then came her, Marissa. She approached me like we were old classmates, running into each other at Whole Foods. "Hi, Hannah," she said with that fake sweet voice, trying way too hard to sound unaffected. "I'm glad you could make it. Would have hated to miss the sequel," I replied, my tone flat. She blinked, forced a smile, and excused herself to check on the caterer or whatever details she needed to control to feel superior. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. What I did do was grab a glass of champagne from a passing server and find a seat near the back of the outdoor ceremony setup. I didn't want to be front and center. I just wanted to observe. The ceremony started late. Figures. Daniel looked tense. Marissa looked polished, but not happy. There was something in her jaw tight, clenched, like she was biting down every 5 seconds. And when the officiant called for vows, I swear Daniel's hands were shaking. His speech was awkward, disconnected, like he was reading lines from a bad rom, com, and couldn't remember his motivation. Marissa's was smoother, but it had this weird undertone, like she wasn't talking to him, but to the audience. Like she was trying to convince us that this was love. I didn't cry. I didn't scoff. I just watched. And as I watched, I realized something strange. I felt nothing for him. No longing, no jealousy, just detachment. Like I was watching a stranger get married. After the ceremony, the guests moved to the reception hall. The estate had these ridiculous chandeliers and a champagne tower that looked like it cost more than my first car. I hung near the edges, sipping slowly, watching the people I used to call mutual friends try to pretend they weren't staring at me. Some came up to say hi. A few apologized awkwardly for not reaching out after the breakup. One of his cousins gave me a hug and whispered, "You're a lot braver than me." Then came the family photos. I happened to be standing nearby when the photographer motioned people into place. One of the coordinators asked me politely, but very obviously, to step aside. I nodded, walked away, and didn't look back. Let them have their picture. Later, during the toasts, I was caught off guard. Someone handed me the mic. Apparently, Daniel had told the MC to invite me to say a few words. Insane? Yes, but I rolled with it. I stood up, walked to the front of the room, and took a breath. I wasn't planning to speak today, I started, calm and steady. But since I'm here, I'll keep it short. I looked straight at Daniel, then Marissa. The first wish you both exactly what you deserve, truly. And I smiled. A real one this time. Some people laughed nervously. Others clapped. A few just stared, eyes wide. Marissa's smile twitched like it was trying to stay in place. Daniel looked down at his drink. I handed the mic back, walked to the bar, and ordered a whiskey. It was only 6 p.m., but the night was already unraveling. The champagne tower toppled over about an hour later. A literal crash that echoed through the room. Glass everywhere. Guests gasped. Someone made a joke about bad omens. I didn't laugh, but I did raise my glass. Shortly after, a friend of mine who'd been at our engagement party pulled me aside and said, "It's wild how many people here are just pretending none of this is weird. Tell me about it." As the night wore on, I started noticing cracks in their perfect display. Daniel was tense. Marissa looked annoyed. They barely spoke to each other, unless it was for photos or logistics. Then, as I was getting ready to leave, I passed by a hallway behind the reception hall and heard voices. Heated ones. Daniel and Marissa. "You invited her," she snapped. "Why did you do that?" "She said she was coming. I didn't know how to say no." "You could have tried. I didn't need to hear more." I turned, walked back through the main hall, waved goodbye to no one, and stepped out into the cool night air. My car was parked under a line of string lights, and as I opened the door, I realized something. I'd gotten everything I needed from that night. Not revenge, not drama, not validation, just clarity. I drove home alone, music low, windows cracked just enough to let the breeze in. My phone buzzed with messages from friends who'd heard about the speech or the champagne crash. I didn't answer them right away. I was too busy feeling free. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I'd reclaimed something. My voice, my story, my peace. And Daniel? He was stuck at the altar he'd built from betrayal, married to a woman he'd started lying for long before he admitted it out loud. Not my circus, not my clowns. About a week after the wedding, I got a text from a mutual friend. Just 4 words. They cut the trip short. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Apparently, paradise turned sour fast. The honeymoon they'd hyped on social media, the one with hashtags and boomerangs and fake laughter, yeah, it ended early. Rumor was they got into a huge fight in Barcelona. Something about attention and who ruined what. I wasn't surprised. Back home, the fallout started quietly. At first it was whispers, then posts, then screenshots. Marissa had started sharing those vague, cryptic quotes on her stories. The kind that scream passive-aggressive drama. Stuff like, "You can't build happiness on someone else's pain." Some people mistake silence for weakness. It didn't take long before people noticed she'd wiped every trace of Daniel from her profile. No more wedding pics. No more forever captions. Just one quiet unfollow. Meanwhile, Daniel reached out to me. Again. This time, it was a message on LinkedIn, of all places. Like we were old co-workers reconnecting. He said he wanted to clear the air, that he didn't want things to be weird between us. As if that ship hadn't sunk months ago. I didn't respond. I just stared at the message, then archived it. A few days later, another friend texted me that Daniel had been venting to some people complaining that married life wasn't what he expected, that Marissa was demanding and not as understanding as I'd been. Funny how that works. Turns out being the side character in your own life story comes with a price. Not long after, I got a notification from Venmo. Daniel had finally transferred me half the money from the wedding deposits, unprompted. No message, no apology, just a note that said, "For your trouble." I laughed. It wasn't the money that mattered, it was what it represented. An admission, a small, silent moment of accountability, or maybe guilt. Either way, I took it. Then came something I hadn't expected, a DM from someone I hadn't talked to since college. She told me she used to work with Marissa a few years back. Said this wasn't the first time Marissa had been involved with a guy who was already in a relationship. Apparently, it was kind of her thing. She'd developed a reputation, a quiet one. She knew how to toe the line, never technically crossing it, but always dancing right on the edge until she got what she wanted. She called it strategic connection. I called it manipulation. More stories trickled in, more people reaching out, some to share sympathy, others to tell me what they saw behind the scenes. People the first barely knew had been watching the whole story unfold like a Netflix series. It was wild, but weirdly, it didn't bother me. If anything, it made me feel less alone. Somewhere in that haze, I did something I'd been thinking about for a while. I posted my story, anonymously, on Reddit. I didn't use names or details, just the timeline, the wedding that got canceled, the new engagement, the invitation, the dress, the speech. It blew up. Thousands of comments poured in, people saying they couldn't believe I had the guts to go, others sharing their own horror stories, some just cheering me on. One comment stuck with me. "She might have taken your fiancé, but you took back your dignity." And that's louder than any vow. That night, I sat in my apartment, reading responses, eating leftover Thai food, and feeling lighter. In therapy, I started talking more honestly. I told my therapist I thought I went to the wedding to make a statement. She said maybe it was something deeper. Maybe it was about showing up for me, not them. She was right. It wasn't revenge. Not really. It was reclamation, reclaiming my voice, my presence, my power. After months of being sidelined, gaslit, and ghosted by the life I thought I was building. Funny how healing doesn't come in big, sweeping moments. Sometimes it's small things, like unmuting your favorite playlist, like journaling instead of texting him, like realizing you no longer care about the apology. One night, I got another message from Marissa this time, short and icy. "Just so you know, your little appearance caused a lot of unnecessary tension. I hope you're happy." I didn't reply. Let her be uncomfortable. Let her wonder if I was still watching. I wasn't. I was busy rebuilding. I'd started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. Emma convinced me to sign up for a 6-week community class downtown. It was messy, therapeutic, and completely mine. At work, I threw myself into a big project that led to a promotion. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was treading water, I was swimming. Meanwhile, Daniel and Marissa were unraveling. Vendors started coming after them for unpaid balances. One photographer even messaged me, asking if I had Daniel's updated contact info. Apparently, they still hadn't paid for the album. You'd think people who wanted a picture-perfect wedding would at least pay for the pictures. Then came the dinner party incident. A friend of a friend had been at their house. Said things got ugly. Loud arguing. People leaving early. Marissa had stormed off mid-meal. Daniel tried to act like nothing happened, but everyone saw it. Their story was cracking, and people noticed. I didn't celebrate their chaos. I wasn't dancing on the ashes, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel poetic. When you build your foundation on lies, it's only a matter of time before the ground gives way. I started dating again, not seriously, but enough to remind myself what it felt like to be seen, to be listened to laugh without second-guessing whether the other person was hiding something behind their smile. It was refreshing and a little scary, but mostly, it was empowering. Not because I needed someone new to fix me, but because I didn't. The official end came with a single headline. Local couple finalizes divorce 6 months after lavish wedding. Okay, it wasn't a headline. It was a text from Emma, followed by 3 crying, laughing emojis and a link to Marissa's newly updated profile bio cleared. Pictures wiped, status, single. Daniel and Marissa were over. Half a year. That's all it took for the fantasy to fall apart. I wasn't surprised. Honestly, I don't think anyone was. It started with a whisper, people noticing they'd stopped showing up together. Then someone saw her moving boxes out of their place. And finally, word spread that Marissa had filed first. No public statements. No mutual posts about going separate ways with love and respect. Just silence. The same kind of silence I'd sat in after he walked out on me. This time it was theirs to deal with. One evening, I bumped into Daniel at a coffee shop. Completely random. I didn't recognize him at first. He looked tired, older, like the stress had aged him. He gave me this half-hearted smile and started to say something. I just nodded once, walked past him, and kept moving. There was nothing left to say. Not anymore. A week later, he messaged me. Long, rambling. The kind of message that reeks of regret but doesn't quite admit fault. He wrote about misjudgments, about how things hadn't worked out the way he'd hoped. He mentioned he'd been reflecting a lot and hoped I was doing well. I didn't answer. Not because I was angry. I wasn't. I just didn't need anything from him anymore. That chapter was over. At the same time, my own life felt like it had finally hit its stride. I'd gotten a promotion at work. A big one. My team threw me a surprise party in the office kitchen, complete with cupcakes and terrible balloons that spelled my name wrong. I loved it. I'd also moved. New city, new apartment, new energy. It was something I'd been thinking about for a while, but the fallout pushed me to finally do it. There's something powerful about choosing to start over before life forces you to. The best part? No one here knows my story. I'm just Hannah. Not the girl who got left or the one who showed up at her ex's wedding in a killer dress. Just me. And I like her. I started writing more. Journaling turned into essays, and those essays turned into a blog. At first, I didn't think anyone would read it, but people did, and then more. Some shared their own stories. Others thanked me for helping them find their voice. I never thought something that hurt so deeply could lead to something that felt so healing. Funny how life works. One of the most meaningful things I did was donate my old wedding dress. I'd held on to it longer than I should have, not because I wanted it, but because part of me hadn't fully let go. The day I dropped it off at a nonprofit that helps women afford formal wear for special events, I felt like I'd exhaled something I didn't even realize I'd been holding on to. It wasn't sadness, it was freedom. My family eventually came around too. My mom, who'd once begged me not to go to the wedding, sat with me one afternoon and apologized. "I didn't understand why you needed to see it through," she said quietly. "But I get it now. You weren't chasing pain. You were chasing peace. That meant everything," Emma cried when I told her. Then she made a toast at our next brunch. To peace, pettiness, and progress. That's us. And then there was someone new. We met through a charity art event. He was kind, steady, hilarious in this dry, offbeat way. We started slow coffee dates, museum strolls, dinners where we actually talked and listened. He didn't try to fix me. He just showed up. That was enough. I don't know where it's going yet, and I'm okay with that. This time, I'm not rushing to the altar or trying to prove anything to anyone. I've learned that love isn't loud. It's not the Instagram perfect moment or the flash of a drone camera over a vineyard. It's in the quiet, in the showing up, in the small, steady truths. As for Daniel and Marissa, they've gone quiet. Last I heard, they were still untangling finances, arguing about debt, and ghosting the last of their wedding vendors. Karma doesn't always come crashing through the front door. Sometimes it just sits quietly in the background, waiting. And when it arrives, it doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be true. I posted one final update on Reddit, shared how far I'd come, thanked the strangers who helped me through the chaos. The comments flooded in, messages from people I'll never meet, telling me they saw themselves in my story, that they left the wrong person, that they stood taller, that they walked away. One message read, "You didn't just survive it, you outgrew it." Yeah, I did. Now I wake up every morning in a new city. Sunlight coming through windows I chose, building a life I love with or without anyone else. Not because someone finally saw my worth, but because I finally did. I used to think Raul was a solid guy. Not perfect, nobody is, but he had that whole charming, intelligent, I light up the room without trying energy. We'd been dating for 8 months, and I genuinely thought we were headed somewhere meaningful. Not soulmate territory maybe, but real, grounded, something I could build on. Then came his sister's wedding, and the kind of betrayal I wouldn't believe if I hadn't lived it. Let me start at the beginning, because context makes this mess even more surreal. Raul and I met at a packed gallery opening last fall. His company had sponsored a projection tech demo, and the place was buzzing. About halfway through the show, the power cut out, thanks to a raging thunderstorm. Everyone pulled out their phones, trying to navigate through the sudden blackout. I was squinting my way to the restroom to fix a loose contact lens, when someone bumped into me hard enough to nearly knock me over. That someone was Raul. He apologized immediately, helped me find the bathroom, and then waited outside to make sure I was okay. We ended up chatting in the gallery cafe after the lights came back, two strangers in a storm, swapping stories under emergency lights and coffee steam. He told me my face in the glow looked like it belonged in a painting. Corny? Maybe. But I was charmed. We fell into a relationship that felt warm and exciting, a mix of lazy Sunday mornings and weekday texts that made me smile during work breaks. He wasn't big on sharing his personal life, especially his family, but he said they were conservative and private. I took it as one of his quirks, so when he invited me to his sister Amelia's wedding, I was surprised and excited. It'd be my first time meeting anyone in his family, and I wanted to make a good impression. I didn't go overboard, but I picked out a dusty mauve dress with subtle silver embroidery, had my nails done, even wore the necklace Raul gave me on our 6-month anniversary. I also spent 2 months putting together their wedding gift, a thoughtful box filled with yen and a certificate for a Kyoto tea ceremony, since AmITheA and her fiancé Matteo were self-proclaimed Japan enthusiasts planning a honeymoon there. It was one of those things where I didn't have much, but I wanted to give something meaningful. The morning of the wedding, Raul picked me up and seemed off, tense, distant. I chalked it up to family drama. Weddings can be stressful, right? But things got weird on the way to the venue. He glanced at my dress and asked if I was sure I wanted to wear it. That maybe it was a little much, and that his family was very traditional. I laughed it off, nervously, because I'd spent weeks planning this look. Still, my stomach turned a little. When we got there, some picturesque garden venue, about an hour outside the city, he parked in a lot behind a row of trees, far from the main building. Then, as I was grabbing the gift box from the back seat, he turned to me and said, "I need you to wait in the car." I thought he was joking. He wasn't. He said his family could be judgmental and that he needed to prepare them before introducing me. I was still trying to make sense of it when he suddenly snapped. "You don't get it, do you? My family doesn't need to see your pathetic face or that cheap-looking dress. Just stay here." Before I could even respond, he reached into my bag, grabbed my phone, and walked away, locking the doors with his key fob. I was trapped, literally. No phone, no way to call for help. I banged on the windows, tried to honk the horn, but we were too far from the main area. Nobody heard, and it was June. 2 hours. I sat in that car for 2 hours. Makeup melted, dress creased, heart breaking one beat at a time. When he came back, he acted like nothing happened, opened the door, smiled, and said, "They're ready to meet you now." I don't even know how I moved. I was numb, humiliated, but I followed him, clutching the remnants of my composure. I asked for my phone. He said, "Later." Then we stepped into the reception tent, all fairy lights and soft music. And that's when Raul, my boyfriend of 8 months, introduced me to his sister with a smile and a wink. "This is Lila. Just a friend from work. Just a friend." I wanted to scream. I wanted to vanish, but all I could do was smile politely as the bridesmaid next to AmITheA giggled and winked back. That was the rest of the night. Raul parading me around like I was his +1 with no name, no relevance, just someone to fill the space until someone better came along. I nodded. I smiled. I pretended to be fine, but inside, I was collapsing. When he dropped me off that night, he leaned in to kiss me. I turned my face away. He didn't even ask why. The wedding gift, the one I poured my heart into, was sitting somewhere among all the others. Raul never told AmITheA it came from me. I stayed up all night, eyes burning, mind racing. What was this relationship? Was it ever real? He's left 41 voicemails since, and I don't know what to do next. The morning after the wedding, I sat on my couch, still in my pajamas, just staring at my phone. 41 missed calls, dozens of texts. Some said, "Hey beautiful, hope you're okay." Others were less sweet. "This silent treatment is ridiculous. And are you seriously mad over nothing?" Nothing. He really thought locking me in a car, taking my phone, humiliating me at his sister's wedding, and claiming credit for a gift I spent months saving for was nothing. I didn't reply. I needed space. And coffee. Mostly coffee. That day I called in sick to work. Technically, I wasn't sick, but you try functioning normally after a man you trusted reduced you to an accessory in a dress he hated. For a few hours, I just sat in the quiet. Then I started thinking about that gift, that box, the yen, the tea ceremony reservation. I still had the receipts, the emails, the screenshots from the calligrapher who hand-wrote AmITheA and Mateo's names in kanji. I couldn't stop picturing Raul handing it to them with that smug look, taking credit like he was some thoughtful, generous brother. My chest burned thinking about it. Not even because I needed credit, but because he stole my effort, my kindness, my time. So, I made a plan. That night, he showed up unannounced, holding takeout from my favorite Thai spot, like nothing had happened. When I opened the door, my face said everything. He blinked, confused. "What's with the long face?" "You locked me in your car," I said, voice flat. He rolled his eyes. "I already explained. My ex was there. I didn't want to start drama. Your ex." He shrugged. "Yeah, Gina, the bridesmaid. We dated for 2 years. Ah, the one he winked at. The one who giggled back, of course. And introducing me as just a friend?" I asked. even though I already knew where this was going. Raul sighed like I was the one being unreasonable. Gina's dad plays golf with my dad. I didn't want to look like I downgraded, okay? I stared at him. Downgraded? He gestured vaguely at my apartment. Look, you're cute, but you're not exactly. Country club material. That's when something clicked. Something in my chest stopped aching and started hardening. He wasn't sorry. He didn't think he did anything wrong. In fact, he thought I should be grateful that someone like him would date someone like me. And the gift? I told them it was from me, he said, casually unboxing the food. Honestly, it was a bit much from you anyway. They might have thought you were trying too hard. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the pad thigh at him. I just looked at him, dead calm, and said, "You need to leave." He blinked. "What?" "You need to go. Now." He scoffed, like I was being dramatic. "You'll calm down." I opened the door. "Out." He muttered something about me being overly sensitive as he gathered his things. He even took the takeout with him. As soon as the door shut behind him, I sat back on the couch and just breathed. Deep, long, calm. Then I started moving. I spent the next day pulling receipts, screenshots, anything that proved the wedding gift had been mine. I even recreated the whole thing. I dipped into my emergency savings, bought another custom-painted wooden box, converted another $1, 500 to yen, and rebooked the same Kyoto tea ceremony. I didn't care about the money. I cared about the truth. The timing couldn't have been better. I'd seen on social media that AmITheA and Matteo were still in town and that Raul's family was hosting a thank you dinner in 2 days. A quiet, intimate family affair. Perfect. I texted Raul that night, keeping it neutral. "Hey, I need to talk. Can we meet up?" He responded in under a minute. "Of course. I miss you." We agreed to meet at a cafe near his parents' house the day of the dinner. I showed up early, placed the recreated gift box beside me on the table, and waited. Raul walked in, all smiles. "You look better," he said, like he hadn't just tried to erase me from his family's memory. I skipped the pleasantries. "Do you understand what you did at the wedding?" He exhaled like this was some exhausting discussion. "Lila, I told you, I don't want your excuses," I cut in. "I want to know if you get it." He fumbled. "Look, I didn't mean to hurt you, okay? It was complicated." I nodded slowly. "Then what's this?" I pointed to the box. He tilted his head. "Another gift?" "For your sister," I said. "Since you took credit for the first one." He laughed. "You're not serious. What are you going to do, hand it to her in person?" I smiled. "Actually, yes. Right now." He stopped laughing. "What?" "I know about the dinner tonight. I'm going to give it to her, and I'm going to tell her the truth." His face dropped like a curtain. "You can't do that." "I can. You'll embarrass me." "No, Raul," I said, standing. "You already did that to yourself." He tried to stop me as I left, begging, threatening, bargaining. I didn't look back. My Uber was already waiting. I showed up at his parents' house at 5:45 p.m., right as people were arriving. Raul must have warned them something was coming, because when his mother opened the door, she looked cautious. "I'm here to see AmITheA," I said, holding the gift box. "I have something for her." From the hallway, I heard her voice. "Who is it?" Then she stepped into view, her face lit with polite confusion. "Oh, you're the friend from the wedding," I smiled. "Not exactly." Raul's mother let me in, visibly unsure what to make of me, but still gracious. I followed AmITheA to the living room, gift in hand. Her husband Matteo waved politely from the dining area, where he was helping Raul's dad set out plates. I handed her the box. "This is for you and Matteo. Congratulations on your wedding." She looked surprised but thanked me. "Wait, sorry, I don't remember your name?" "Lila," I said. "And I'm not just a friend from work. Raul and I were dating for 8 months, until he locked me in his car at your wedding." Her smile faltered. "What?" So I told her everything, quietly, calmly, in full detail. Her face changed with every sentence: shock, disbelief, realization. When I showed her the original gift photos and planning notes, her jaw dropped. You made that tea ceremony gift? I nodded. She was still staring at me, stunned, when Raoul burst through the front door out of breath, eyes wide, already mid-panic. What the hell are you doing here? Amelia turned to him, slow and steady. Is it true? He blustered, lied, denied. Then he saw the open box. His voice cracked. We did it together. Amelia looked at him, then at me, then at the gift. Get out, she said. And he did. Raoul's parents were horrified. His dad looked like he might actually cry. His mom apologized to me and asked me to stay for dinner. I did. That dinner? Awkward at first. No doubt about it. But there was a kind of stillness in the air, like the earth was holding its breath after a storm. I stayed. Not out of spite. Not to make Raoul look bad. I stayed because Amelia asked me to. Because I needed to see this thing through, all the way. And because for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel small. Amelia and Mateo were warm, even after everything. We sat in the corner of the living room, and I told them more about the gift, how I'd saved little by little, skipped coffee shop visits, took extra freelance work, how the tea ceremony place took weeks to book. Mateo kept shaking his head, saying, You really did all that? For us? I nodded. I just wanted you to know it came from the right place. That's all. Raoul's mom, Lucia, brought over tea and sat with us. At one point, she reached across the couch, took my hand, and said, I'm sorry my son treated you that way. You deserved respect. You still do. I almost cried again. Not from pain this time, just the weird kind of grief that shows up when people finally see you after being invisible. Raoul's dad, Mateo Sr., stayed mostly quiet. But when I got up to leave after dinner, he said, Come back any time, Lila. You are welcome here. The quiet thunder in those words told me everything I needed to know. As I was walking out, my phone buzzed. Another text from Raoul. Why are you doing this to me? I said I was sorry. I didn't reply. The next few days, he blew up my phone. Calls, voicemails, texts that ping-ponged from furious to desperate, like he couldn't figure out what tone might win me back. One minute it was, You ruined my life. I hope you're proud. Next minute, please talk to me. I miss you. I can change. But I'd already seen what I needed to see. No apology, no growth, just panic over getting caught. There's a big difference between regret and accountability. A few nights later, I met Amelia for coffee at this quiet little place tucked behind a bookstore. She came alone, no Raoul, no drama, and we sat for hours. We talked about the wedding, her plans for Japan, the way Raoul had been slowly pulling away from the family, acting bigger than he was. She told me she'd confronted him after I left, that the family decided to cut him off financially, emotionally, all of it until he showed some kind of real change. He tried to crash dinner last Sunday, she said, stirring her latte. Mom didn't even open the door, just said, You can't walk into this house until you understand what you did. I asked if she thought he ever would. Amelia looked out the window for a second. I don't know. Maybe. But that's his work, not mine. She handed me a small envelope before we left. Inside was a card and a plane ticket to Tokyo, open-ended return, tucked beside a handwritten note that said, Come with us to Kyoto next spring. For the tea ceremony. Our treat. You earned it. I didn't say yes right away, but I didn't say no either. It's been a few weeks now. Raoul's finally stopped calling, or maybe he got tired of hearing my voicemail. Either way, the silence feels good, like fresh snow over the wreckage. I changed my locks, installed a little camera above my door, not out of fear, just clarity. I'd let someone into my life without ever really asking if they deserved the space they were taking up. That's on me, but I'm learning. One night, I sat out on my fire escape with the journal Amelia gave me, a beautiful linen-covered thing with soft pages and a ribbon bookmark. I started writing, not just about Raoul, but everything I'd ignored while dating him. The times he'd made subtle digs about my apartment. The times he'd dodged questions about his family. The way he always changed the subject when I brought up future plans. It hit me all at once. I had bent myself into all kinds of shapes to fit into a world he never planned to let me into. But now I'm sitting upright. I see things clearer. I'm not bitter, just wiser. A little less trusting, maybe, but not closed off. People ask if I'm dating again. The answer's no. And honestly, that feels like the healthiest thing I've said out loud in months. I go to the gym sometimes. I cook more. I've picked up some new freelance work. Nothing dramatic, just small things that make me feel a little more like myself, a little more solid. One of my coworkers asked if I'd ever run into Raul again. I said maybe. The city's not that big. But if I do, I won't flinch. I won't shrink. I'll just smile and keep walking. Last week, I got a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I let it play while I folded laundry. It was Raul's ex, Gina, the bridesmaid. She said she'd heard everything, that Raul tried to crash on her couch after getting kicked out by his parents. She didn't let him in. She didn't even let him finish his story. But she wanted me to know she hadn't known he was in a relationship, and that she was sorry for her part in that wedding night disaster. I texted back a simple thanks for letting me know. Nothing more. We don't need to be friends, but I appreciate the gesture. Sometimes karma isn't loud. It doesn't always show up in explosions or grand finales. Sometimes it's just a slow fade, a quiet exit. And sometimes the best revenge is living like they never broke you. Because they didn't. They just taught you what to never settle for again.